Here we are back again after that exciting chapter of Pastor Kirkland. And now here we are in chapter 24. Hey, we're over the halfway mark as we finish this one up. So here we go. And with James Hall. Now listen, here it is. See if you can pick these things out as we read. His birth and education, settled in North Carolina, rouses his people to oppose the mother country, is made captain of a company of cavalry, acts also as chaplain, marches to South Carolina, offered the commission of brigadier general by Greene, declines. His afterlife. James Hall was born in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, August 22nd, 1744. He was 8 years of age. His parents removed to North Carolina and settled in a district known as Iredell County. At the age of 20, he made a public profession of religion and soon after turned his attention to the ministry, but did not enter college till 1774, or in his 31st year. Being a fine mathematician, Dr. Witherspoon wished to retain him as a tutor at the college, but he said he had devoted himself to the ministry and did not feel at liberty to make any engagements that would divert him from it. He therefore entered immediately on his theological studies under Dr. Witherspoon, and in less than 2 years was licensed to preach. In 1778, he was settled over the United Congregation of Fourth Creek, Concord, and Bethany, and remained their pastors till 1790. Previous to this, he had become deeply enlisted in the cause of the colonies and declined no service, no matter how great the sacrifice it demanded, which could in any way benefit his country. He did not confine his efforts to the pulpit, but took the lead in all public meetings held to discuss the political topics of the day. Sorry, kids, but I'm not finding pastors willing to do that in the last 50 years. Continuing. He denounced toryism unsparingly, and on every occasion when he could get a hearing, made eloquent and earnest appeals in behalf of freedom. The claims of one's country, he declared, were next to those of God and could not be treated with neglect without sacrificing every principle of honor and of duty. He was not one of those timorous patriots who are zealous for their country when not called upon to encounter personal danger, but are silent when the thunder of cannon is near. While the conflict was raging in the northern province, his sympathy and interest found expression in prayers, exhortations, and public addresses. But the moment the sound of battle was heard on the borders of his own state, that sympathy showed itself in action. Cornwallis, in his victorious march through South Carolina, sent out detachments in various directions to scour the country, whose barbarous conduct filled every bosom with indignation. Mr. Hall at once called together his flock, and after relating some of the bloody acts that had been committed by the invaders, besought them in the name of their distracted country and for the sake of their friends and neighbors who were hewn down by the merciless foe to take up arms in their defense. Tears rolled down the cheeks of those sturdy frontiersmen at the thrilling appeal, and catching the enthusiasm of their pastor, they immediately organized a body of cavalry to go to the assistance of their fellow countrymen in South Carolina. When the inquiry was made who should be selected as captain, they declared with one voice for Parson Hall. He accepted the appointment without a moment's hesitation, and with his sword buckled to his side and Bible in his pocket, put himself at their head. He had, however, no intention of seeking his profession in his military command. He believed he was equally doing God's service, whether fighting or praying, and he therefore installed himself their chaplain and fulfilled the duties of this office as faithfully as those of captain. On their way to South Carolina, he prayed with them regularly, and on the Sabbath he preached to them. In fact, they were a part of his usual audience at home, for they were almost to a man members of one of his congregations. It reminded one of the times of Cromwell to see this man of God assemble his company of irregular cavalry and with head uncovered solemnly commended them and their cause to God, then ride to their head and give the order to march. To these simple-minded, brave men, there was nothing incongruous in this. They had received their lessons in patriotism from their pastor, been taught by him to regard resistance to the tyrannical oppressions of the mother country obedience to God, and urged by him to the present undertaking, and it seemed perfectly fit that he should be both their leader and spiritual teacher. He was absent in this expedition for several months, sharing the hardships and privations of his soldiers throughout, and ever retaining their confidence and love by his... Let me start that over. He was absent in this expedition for several months, sharing the hardships and privations of his soldiers throughout, and ever treating their confidence and love by his cool courage, Christian forbearance, and faithfulness. Subsequently, an army was sent against the Cherokees in Georgia, and he accompanied it as chaplain. It was the long and tedious march through the wilderness which occupied 2 months. He found but one opportunity to preach to the troops. The sermon he delivered on this occasion, being the first ever preached in the Indian Territory, the adjacent county, in honor of the event, was named after him, Hall County. His influence and abilities were so well known that after the death of General Davidson in the skirmish of Crownsford on the Catawba, General Greene, then commanding the Carolinas, selected him to fill his place and commissioned him Brigadier General, which was offered to him. He declined the appointment, however, saying that there were others who could fill that post quite as well as himself while he preached the gospel, leading his little flock, whom he had urged to take up arms to assist their neighbors in driving back the enemy, who were wasting them with fire and sword. He regarded a very different thing from changing his profession and devoting himself to a military life. The former was a duty forced on him by circumstance. The latter was not, and appeared to him more a matter of choice as to what profession he would follow. At the close of the war, he found religion in his vicinity in a low condition, and his accustomed zeal commenced, quote, to repair the waste place of Zion, end quote. A powerful revival followed his exertions, and many were gathered into the church. He gave himself no rest in the work so dear to his heart, and his health at length broke down under his severe labors. Unable to rally, he was, after much persuasion, induced to try the effects of a sea voyage to restore it, and embarked at Charleston for Philadelphia. In 1793, he undertook a missionary tour along the western frontier under the commission of Synod, which involved great hardships. In 1800, with two others, he commenced a mission at Natchez, the first missionary effort made in the lower valley of the Mississippi. His labors in the cause of education were of incalculable benefit to the South, and many distinguished statesmen and divines were indebted to him for their literary training. He died on the 25th of July, 1826, in the 80th year of his age. That was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Here's a guy, which I'm telling you, kids, to be able to be taught by Witherspoon, and here was a guy with a great mathematical mind who could have stayed with Witherspoon. My goodness gracious, Witherspoon, as we learned, one of the most fabulous statesmen, pastors, presidents of a university. And here we have it, that this man said, no, he wants to go do God's work. But he understood that in the time of need, and when tyranny and that which was wrong was imposing upon his congregation and the nation as a whole, he stood up against it. And not only did he rally his people to fight, he was elected what? He was elected their captain and led them to war. Wow. Anyway, just wonderful, wonderful stories and great missionary work on top of that. So James Hall even has a county named after him. Isn't that amazing? How amazing. Well, with that, we will be going to the next chapter, which will be 25, and this will be John Gano. This will be another amazing pastor. I'm looking forward to talking with you about John Gano here on, what's the name of the book? The Chaplains and Clergy of the Revolution, that was compiled by J.T. Headley and published in 1864.